If you're watching this, chances are you or someone you love has looked at senior living options and thought, well, at least some of these services are free. And honestly, who wouldn't feel relieved by that? When you see the word free, it feels like a gift, like someone's finally cutting you a break after a lifetime of paying bills, raising families, and working hard. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't tell you up front. Some of those so-called free services in senior living can quietly cost you thousands of dollars later. Not immediately, not obviously, but slowly and sometimes painfully. Today, I want to talk to you like a friend who's been around the block a few times. No scare tactics, no complicated legal talk, just clear, honest conversation about 3 free services that often come with strings attached. And we'll start right away with the first one, because this is where many people unknowingly step onto a very expensive path. Let's begin with what's often called the free health assessment or complementary care evaluation. It sounds harmless, even helpful. You're told it's just a way for the community to understand your needs better. Maybe a nurse sits down with you, asks questions about your mobility, medications, memory, and daily routine. You might think, great, they're being thorough, they care. And yes, sometimes they do. But here's the part that's rarely explained clearly. That free assessment often becomes the foundation for future charges. Every little note, every small observation gets documented. Maybe you mention that your knees feel stiff in the morning. Maybe you admit you sometimes forget where you put your glasses. On their own, these are normal parts of aging, but on paper, they can later be used to justify higher levels of care, and higher care means higher monthly fees. The tricky part is that this doesn't always happen right away. You move in, things feel fine, and your bill looks reasonable. Then, a few months later, you're told your care level has changed. Nothing dramatic happened. You didn't fall, you didn't get sick, but suddenly you're paying hundreds or even thousands more each month based on that original free evaluation and ongoing internal reviews you don't really have control over. I've spoken to families who were shocked when this happened. They'd say, but mom's doing the same things she's always done. And that's exactly the problem. The criteria aren't always about sudden changes. They're often about interpretations. And once that system is in place, it's very hard to argue your way back down to a lower cost. Now, let me gently share something important. This doesn't mean you should refuse assessments altogether. That wouldn't be wise either. The real issue is not asking enough questions up front. When someone offers a free health evaluation, it's crucial to ask how the results will be used later. Will it affect future pricing? How often are reassessments done? Can you request an outside opinion if you disagree? These questions can save you a lot of stress and money down the road. As we ease into the second free service, I want you to notice a pattern. These offers usually feel supportive at first, almost generous, and that brings us to free transportation services. Many senior living communities proudly advertise complimentary rides to doctor's appointments, grocery stores, or social outings. For many people, this is a huge selling point. Driving isn't always easy or safe anymore, and having someone else handle it feels like freedom. But here's where things quietly shift. The basic transportation might truly be free, but it's often limited in ways that aren't obvious at first. Maybe it only runs on certain days. Maybe you have to book far in advance, or maybe it only covers a small radius. At first, that might be fine. You adjust, you plan around it. Then your needs change just a little. You need more frequent doctor visits, or your specialist is farther away, or the available times no longer work for you. Suddenly, you're offered premium transportation or personalized rides, and those are not free, not even close. They can be charged per trip, per hour, or bundled into monthly add-ons that add up fast. What makes this especially frustrating is that by this point, you're already settled in. You've made friends, you've unpacked. Leaving feels overwhelming, so you pay. Not because you want to, but because it feels like there's no other practical choice. There's also an emotional cost here that people don't talk about enough. When transportation becomes something you have to constantly negotiate or pay extra for, it can quietly limit your independence. You might start skipping outings, delaying appointments, or feeling like a burden for asking. And that's not how this stage of life is supposed to feel. Now, as we continue this conversation, you might be thinking, all right, I see how this works. Free at first, expensive later. And you're right, which brings us naturally to another common offer that looks generous on the surface, but often carries hidden consequences once you're fully inside the system. That next offer usually shows up wrapped in a smile and a sense of relief, especially for families. It's often described as free help with medication management. Someone tells you, "Don't worry, we'll take care of all that for you." Pills are confusing, schedules get tricky, and nobody wants to make a mistake. So hearing that this support is included can feel like a huge weight lifted off your shoulders. At first, it really does feel helpful. Your medications are organized. Someone reminds you when it's time to take them. Maybe they even hand them to you with a glass of water and a kind word. But over time, that free help can quietly turn into one of the biggest cost escalators in senior living. Here's how it usually happens. The moment staff begins assisting with medications in any hands-on way, it often reclassifies you into a higher care category. Even if you were perfectly capable of managing things yourself before, once the system marks you as needing help, it's hard to undo. That classification alone can trigger a higher monthly fee. Then there's the subtle pressure. You might be told it's safer if they handle everything, or that it's policy, or that it's just easier for everyone. And honestly, on some days, it probably is easier, but convenience has a price. What starts as free medication assistance can later become mandatory medication management, complete with ongoing charges that weren't clearly explained at the beginning. I've seen situations where someone only needed help opening child-proof bottles or reading small print. Simple fixes could have kept them independent, but instead, full medication control was taken over and the monthly bill jumped significantly. And once that control is handed over, it's very difficult to get it back, even if your abilities haven't changed. This isn't about rejecting help, it's about understanding the long-term impact of accepting it too quickly. A smart move is to ask if there are ways to maintain partial independence. Can you self-administer with periodic check-ins? Can family assist instead? Are there tools that make it easier without formal staff involvement? These questions matter more than most people realize. Now, as we keep going, there's another free service that sounds especially comforting, particularly during moments of worry or uncertainty. It's often called complementary safety monitoring or emergency response support. You might hear about pull cords, wearable buttons, or 24-hour on-site response. And again, this sounds like a no-brainer. Safety is everything. In the beginning, this service really does offer peace of mind. Knowing someone can respond quickly if you need help feels reassuring. But here's where the hidden cost sneaks in. Once you use that system a few times, even for minor issues, it can be documented as increased dependency, not because you did anything wrong, but because the system is designed to track usage, not context. Maybe you pressed the button because you felt dizzy one day. Maybe you needed help reaching something. Maybe you were just unsure and wanted reassurance. All reasonable things. But those calls can be logged and later used as justification for additional supervision fees or a higher care tier. What's more, some communities start with basic monitoring included, then gradually shift certain responses into billable services. Nighttime assistance, repeated calls, or non-emergency responses may suddenly carry charges, and unless you're reading every statement closely, those extra fees can slip by unnoticed for months. There's also something emotional tied up in this. When every request for help feels like it's being counted or tracked, people often hesitate to ask. They wait longer than they should. They downplay discomfort, and that can lead to bigger problems later, both physically and financially. The common thread in all of this is not that these services are bad or unnecessary. Many people truly benefit from them. The real issue is transparency and timing. When something is labeled free, it lowers our guard. We stop asking hard questions. We assume it's a gift, not a gateway. It's worth slowing down and thinking about how these services change your status inside a community. Each added layer of help can move you further away from being seen as independent, even if your actual abilities haven't shifted much. And once that perception changes, costs tend to rise steadily. This is where having clear conversations early can make a huge difference. Asking how usage is tracked, asking what triggers a change in care level, asking whether there are alternatives that don't automatically increase fees. These aren't confrontational questions, they're protective ones. Now, as we keep going, there's another free service that ties all of this together and often has the biggest long-term financial impact of all, especially because it affects not just your monthly bill, but your overall control and flexibility once you're fully settled in. That final free service often doesn't even feel like a service at all. It's usually presented as guidance, support, or help with coordination. Sometimes it's called complementary care coordination, resident advocacy, or simply, we'll handle everything for you. And after everything we've talked about, you can probably sense where this is going. Because while it sounds comforting, this is the one that can quietly take the most control out of your hands. At first, having someone coordinate your care feels like a blessing. They talk to doctors, communicate with staff, keep notes, and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. You're told there's no extra charge for this oversight. And early on, that may be true. But what's rarely explained is that this coordination often becomes the decision-making engine behind your future costs. Once a community is coordinating your care, they're also interpreting your needs. They decide when additional services are recommended, they suggest when it might be time for more supervision. And while these decisions may be well-intentioned, they're also tied to the community's internal policies and financial structure. The more care you're assessed as needing, the more revenue is generated. This can show up in subtle ways: a suggestion that you'd be more comfortable with extra help, a note that you seem to be needing reminders more often, a recommendation to add another layer of service just to be safe. Each individual change may not feel significant, but together they can dramatically increase your monthly costs over time. What makes this especially difficult is that these recommendations often come from people you've grown to trust. They're familiar faces, they've helped you before, so questioning them can feel awkward, even ungrateful. But remember, asking for clarity is not being difficult, it's being responsible with your future. Another hidden cost here is loss of flexibility. Once care coordination is fully internal, bringing in outside help can become complicated or even discouraged. You might be told that private caregivers aren't allowed, or that family involvement needs approval. Suddenly, options that could save money or preserve independence feel out of reach. This is why it's so important to understand who has the final say. Can you decline recommended services? Can you pause them? Can you seek a second opinion? Or once the system decides, are you locked into the added costs? These answers vary widely, and they matter more than glossy brochures ever will. Now, let's gently bring all of this together. Free assessments, free transportation, free medication help, free safety monitoring, free coordination, none of these are inherently bad. In fact, for many people, they provide real comfort and support. The danger lies in not realizing how quickly free can turn into mandatory or upgraded or reclassified. The key takeaway here is awareness. The more you understand how these systems work, the more power you have to make choices that fit your life, not just the community structure. Small decisions made early can protect your independence and your finances for years. If you're considering senior living or already living in a community, it's never too late to ask questions. Request explanations in plain language. Ask for written policies. Involve a trusted family member or advisor. These steps aren't about distrust, they're about partnership. And if you've already experienced unexpected costs from so-called free services, you're not alone. Many families learn these lessons the hard way. So if you feel comfortable, leave a comment and let others learn from your story. If this conversation has been helpful, give the video a like. It helps more people find information that can truly make a difference. And if you want more honest, practical guidance about aging, independence, and making smart choices later in life, subscribe to the channel. We're here to talk about the things people often avoid in a way that respects your intelligence and your experience. No matter your age, you deserve clarity, dignity, and control over your own life. Small, informed choices can protect all three. Here's to staying empowered, staying curious, and living your best life at every stage.